my own. When I wander through this wonderland alone, never knowing my right foot from my left, my hat from my glove. I'm too misty, too much in love.
What's going on, family? I'm Scrapbook Boxing, the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. Going to continue my conversation with you concerning the complete history of boxing. Cold evening on a Monday night, January 16th, 1950. The world featherweight champion Willie Pep knocks out St. Louis' Charlie Riley, 1 minute, 5 seconds, in the 5th round. It was in his hometown, at the Kell Auditorium. The referee was Harry Kessler, decided to step in and stop the contest, preventing Charlie Riley from any further punishment. Chillin' Charlie Riley was born April 22nd, 1922 in St. Louis, Missouri. He would die May 22nd, 1994, just 72 years of age at the time of his arrest. And he would reside in St. Louis, Missouri. Fought from 1940 to 1950s with a record of 69 wins, 29 losses, 39 knockouts with 2 draws, a total of 100 contests. He was in the ring with David Gallardo and David Moore, Jimmy Carter, Glenn Flanagan, and even Teddy Red Top Davis. Red Top Davis was something else. But Charlie Riley was a counterpuncher. I met him 2 separate occasions. He was 27 years of age, stood 5 foot 2 inches, weighed 125.5 pounds with a 66-inch reach, had a record of 51 wins, 11 losses, 2 draws, and 21 knockouts. As for Willie Pep, he was also 27 years of age. He stood 5 foot 5 inches, weighed 123.5 pounds, had a 68-inch reach with a record of 143 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, and 46 knockouts. Now, Joe Sandy Saller was not a great fan of Charlie Riley because when Joe Sandy Saller was in the war, Charlie Riley was on the street stating that he was the man in the featherweight division, although he was knocked out by Willie Pep. And Willie Pep was also knocked out by Joe Sandy Saller. So it's amazing when you talk to individuals on an individual basis, the stories you receive. February 8th, 1950, Jersey Joe Walcott would knock out Harold Johnson of Philadelphia in the 3rd round. Here's ironic. Something that is really strange, if you ask me. 1936, Jersey Joe Walcott would knock out Harold Johnson's father, Phil Johnson, in the 3rd round in Philadelphia with the exact same punch, overhand right to the left temple. Now, in all fairness to Harold Johnson's father, Phil Johnson, he stated that he had a bad back. But guess what? Dr. Joseph L. Levy, who was the commissioner in the physician's department, carried Johnson out on a stretcher. Why? Because they found out that he had a dislocated disc. That's the exact injury his father had. His injury was in 1936, and his son, Harold Johnson, injury was in 1950. Both by the same man, same arena, same round, same punch. You tell me boxing isn't something else. Now, as I stated, the contest took place in Philadelphia Arena. Harold Johnson weighed 180 pounds, and he lost to Jersey Joe Walcott weighing 197 pounds. The referee was Dave Biloff. stopped the contest 1 minute 3 seconds of the third round in front of 7,500 spectators. Collectively, they would pay $32,519. Harold Johnson was the son of Phil Johnson. He was born August 9th, 1927. Fought between 1946 and 1971. Had a record of 87 total bouts, 76 wins, 31 knockouts. He died February 19th, 2015. He was 87 years of age at the time of his death. And he would reside in Philadelphia. Now, I met Harold Johnson several times. He was always a stand-up individual with me. I saw him a lot with Bob Montgomery. Bob Montgomery was the promoter for the Blue Horizon in 1971. And I spoke about Bob Montgomery many times. He was in action with Bo Jack and Ike Williams, many other great fighters in his day. Harold Johnson stood 5 foot 10 inches. He was a light heavyweight with a 74-inch reach out of Philadelphia. On a Tuesday evening, January 24th, world light heavyweight champion Freddie Mills had lost his title to Joey Maxim in 10 rounds in London. Joey Maxim would become the new world light heavyweight champion at the Al Earls Court Express Hall in Kennington, London, United Kingdom. And Freddie Mills was 30 years old. He stood 5 foot 10 and a half inches, weighed 173 pounds. Had a 72-inch reach, had a record of 77 wins, 17 losses, 6 draws, and 55 knockouts. Now, as for Joey Maxim, he was 27 years old. He stood 6 foot 1 inch, weighed 174 pounds with a 71 and a half inch reach, had a record of 68 wins, 16 losses, 4 draws, and 15 knockouts. Now, they would call Freddie Mills Fearless Freddie. He was born June 26, 1919, and he died July 25th, 1965. He fought from 1936 to 1950, had a total bout career of 101 bouts, 77 wins, 18 losses, 55 knockouts, and he was stopped 7 times with 6 draws. It was said that Freddie Mills would own a club. He was arrested in a public restroom with charges and claims of murdering 8 prostitutes. And he said he was a victim of suicide. You see, all alleged as far as I'm concerned. Joey Maxim was born 1922, Cleveland, Ohio. He died June 2nd, 2001, 79 years of age at the time of his arrest. He had a record of 116 total bouts, 83 wins, 29 losses, 22 knockouts. He was stopped once with 4 draws. I met Freddie Mills at the Boxing Hall of Fame. Defeated Floyd Patterson. He was in the ring with Carl Bobo Olsen, Ray Robinson, Ezra Charles, Joe Walcott, Archie Moore, Irish Bob Murphy, Danny Nardico, Tiger Ted Laurie, Paul Andrews, among many. When Freddie Mills was knocked out by Lloyd Marshall, a member of the Black Murderers Row, better say, it was a fierce knockout. And Lloyd Marshall never received an established light heavyweight championship opportunity. Yes, he was a colored. Well, no, he wasn't a colored light heavyweight champion. He didn't get that opportunity, but he was part of the Black Murderers Row. So he never received an established world light heavyweight championship title. But he was a fascinating fighter, and I have him the 4th best member of that group. Have Holman Williams, Charlie Burley, Coco Kid, and then Lloyd Marshall, and then Eddie Booker. Wednesday evening, June 22nd, 1949, Ezra Charles would defeat Jersey Joe Walcott at the Comiskey Park in Chicago, Illinois. The referee was Davey Miller. He awards Charles the NBA World Heavyweight Championship title after Joe Louis would vacate his crown and choose both men at a crack at his crown. And Joe Louis and Eddie Egan would form the International Boxing Club. They earned 50% of that gate. Charles and Walcott would earn 25% apiece. If you ask me, Eddie Egan would receive 75%, and Joe Louis would earn 25% of the 50% share, if you will. Now, there were 25,932 spectators who would pay collectively $546 to see that contest. Ring Magazine, the British Boxing Board of Control, the New York SAC, and the European Boxing Union only recognized Charles as the NBA heavyweight champion. They didn't recognize him of their prospective belts because Lee Savoy was so-called entitled to an opportunity, and Joe Louis would appoint both Jersey Joe Walcott and Ezzard Charles. So when Joe Louis would defeat Lee Savoy in 1951, then Ezzard Charles would receive full recognition after Joe Louis would lose to Ezzard Charles in 1950. So they figured that Joe Louis was good enough for Ezzard Charles to claim the victory, but it wasn't until Joe Louis defeated Lee Savoy the following year. Very interesting. And then Ezzard Charles will be fully recognized as the heavyweight champion of the world. Now, Ezzard Charles is 27 years old. He stood 6 foot, he weighed 182 pounds, had a 73-inch reach, a record of 62 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw, and 34 knockouts. Jersey Joe Walcott was 35 years old. He stood 6 foot, weighed 196 pounds, with a 74-inch reach. He fought from 1930 to 1953. Ezzard Charles fought from 1940 to 1959. Joe Walcott had a record of 42 wins, 15 losses, 1 draw, and 26 knockouts. Wednesday, September 27, 1950, the new NBA World Heavyweight Champion defeats former 12-year reign World Heavyweight Champion Detroit Brown Bomber Joe Louis. We're speaking of Ezzard Charles. They fought at the New York Yankee Stadium. It was Ezzard Charles' second title defense. Ezzard Charles would make his highest earnings of $57,405 while making his 4th NBA title defense with Joe Louis at this point. Even after the 2 years, 3 months retirement, Louis was a favorite, earning 2-to-1 odds. He earned $100,458. Both men brought 22,357 fight fans to the arena in New York's Yankee Stadium. They grossed $205,370. Between radio and television views, $140,000. That's remarkable. CBS had covered the broadcast. They wanted to see Joe Louis one last time. Joe Louis is 36 years old. He stood 6 foot 1.5 inches, weighed 218 pounds with a 76-inch reach. He fought from 1934 to 1951. Had a record of 58 wins, 1 loss, and 49 knockouts. Ezzard Charles, on the other hand, was 28 years old. He stood 6 feet. And he had a record of 66 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw, 37 knockouts. He weighed 185 pounds and had a 73-inch reach. He fought from 1940 to 1959. Now, the British Boxing Board of Control recognized Lee Savoy at this point as the heavyweight champion, not Charles, because Louis would KO Savoy June of 1951. Now, at this point, the British Boxing Board of Control would recognize Charles as champion. Charles was always the champion, unified. He was universally recognized. But the British Boxing Board of Control, the Boxing Union, New York SAC, were basically proving a point because they felt as though Ezzard Charles and Rocky Marciano were 2 men that should have met up. But it turns out Ezzard Charles would meet up with Walcott because Walcott was going to take Joe Louis to court once again, even though he was knocked out in 48, but he felt he was robbed in 47. So this whole thing got mixed up and Savoy got lost in the shuffle. For that reason, they didn't recognize Charles as a universal recognition of World Heavyweight Champion until Joe Louis would knock out Lee Savoy in 51. Very interesting. Now, they state that Joe Louis and Ezra Charles in 50 was satisfied that, but it didn't. It wasn't until Louis knocked out Savoy in 51. March 14th, 1951, Chicago's welterweight top-ranked contender, Johnny Bratton, who was known as the Honey Boy, would defeat New Jersey's welterweight. He was a challenger. His name was Charlie Fusari. Now, Fusari faced Ray Robinson in his last welterweight championship title defense, and he would lose. But he was respected as a New Jersey welterweight champion, quote unquote. So the vacant crown that Ray Robinson would drop, he wanted to move up to the middleweight division to challenge for a title. So Charlie Fusari and Chicago's Johnny Bratton would mix it up for the NBA version of the welterweight championship strap. 15 rounds in Chicago. Now, Charlie faced Ray Robinson August 9th, 1950, 15 rounds at the Roosevelt Stadium in Jersey City, New Jersey. That was Ray's last welterweight championship title defense. The referee for that contest was Paul Cavalier. Paul Cavalier was a stand-up individual, knew him personally. He had a brother, Art Cavalier. They trained fighters at the Lenny Shores Boxing Gym in Totowa, New Jersey. And Paul Cavalier, who is hardly ever discussed, he used to spar with Gene Tunney. He was a very good fighter. He would win the New Jersey's heavyweight championship title when he defeated two-ton Tony Galento. And Paul and I spoke for many, many hours, days upon days, at Lenny Shores Boxing Gym. He was something else. And his brother was a very nice man as well. You had Ace Murata, all those fellas in that gym. It was Lenny Shores Boxing Gym in Totowa Avenue. Now, Charlie Fusari stood 5 foot 10 inches. He was a welterweight, fought from 1944 to 1952. He was born August 20th of 1924 in Sicily, Italy. He died November 1st, 1985. He was 61 years of age at the time of his arrest, and he would reside in Irvington, New Jersey. Now, May 18th, 1951, the world welterweight champion, Chicago's Playboy, Johnny Bratton, would lose his NBA championship title to Kid Gavilen, Gerardo Gonzalez, the Cuban Hawk. He was born January 6, 1926 in Cuba, died February 13, 2003, 77 years of age at the time of his arrest, and he would reside in Havana, Cuba. He stood 5 foot 10 and a half inches, had a 71-inch reach, fought from 1943 to 1958, had a total bout career of 143 contests, over 100 wins, and 28 knockouts. He had 30 losses. He was in the ring with Vince Martinez and Ray Robinson, Billy Graham, Ralph Tiger Jones. Now, Johnny Bratton, he was known as the Honey Boy. He was born September 9th, 1927 in Chicago, Illinois. He died August 15th, 1993, just 65 years of age at the time of his death, and he would reside in Little Rock, Arkansas. He stood 5 foot 9 inches as welterweight, fought from 1944 to 1955, had a total bout career of 88 contests, 61 wins, 34 knockouts, 24 losses. And the thing about Johnny Bratton, he be in the ring with fighters such as Ralph Tiger Jones, Chico Verona, Bobby Dykes, Lester Felton, Holy Mims, Gene, they call him Gene Dummy Harrison, but Gene Harrison. Who else was he in the ring with? Johnny Bratton. Was he in the ring with? Oh, I'm trying to think of some of the guys. Danny Bang Bang Wapner, Adele Flanagan. Who else was he in the ring with? Ike Williams and Chalky. In fact, and I say this all the time, Johnny Bratton went 9 rounds with Ike Williams with a broken jaw. Why that's important? Because he did the exact same thing when he was in the ring with Kid Gavilen. That was one of the best welterweight championship fights. One of the very best. Alongside with Kid Gavilen and Gil Turner. But I remember when Kid Gavilen took on a southpaw from Michigan State. He was a very, very good professional, but he was an outstanding amateur. His name was Chuck Davey. Fought him February 1953, stopped him in 10 rounds. And Chuck Davey was a very good southpaw, but he fought out at Michigan State. Very good amateur fighter. Kid Gavilen fought Buster Tyler several times. He was something else. He was in the ring with Bojack, all the greats. So you're looking at a group of fighters who really put together some great fights. And these were pay-per-view fights today. But they were just fights back in yesteryear to get to contention. Kid Gavilen and Johnny Bratton would fight for the America's welterweight championship title. And what a war that was. Now, on the evening of Wednesday, February 14th, 1951, Sugar Ray Robinson becomes the world middleweight champion when he would defeat the Bronx Raging Bull, Jake LaMotta. He was the fifth fighter to get that opportunity, but he would become the third black middleweight champion in boxing history. And he would stop Jake LaMotta 2 minutes, 4 seconds of the 13th round. It was known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. They fought in Chicago Stadium. LaMotta's third title defense. Ray Robinson was the 3-1 favorite. Jake was 28 years old. He stood 5 foot 11 inches, weighed 160 pounds, had a 72.5-inch reach and a record of 78 wins, 14 losses, 3 draws, and 28 knockouts. As for Robbie, he was 29 years old. He stood 5 foot 11 inches. And he had 155 pounds on his body, 67-inch reach. He had a record of 121 wins, 1 loss, 2 draws, and 79 knockouts. 14,802 spectators paid collectively $180,619. LaMotta earned 45% of the gate, and Ray Robinson would earn 15% of the gate. His net worth, Ray Robinson, was through the roof during that time. And Ray Robinson would receive $20,840 plus $1,500 for television rights. He was something else. Jake LaMotta earned $62,522 plus $1,500 for television rights. Now, Jake LaMotta was in the ring with Tony Gennaro and Frizzy Zivic, Marcel Sedan and Holman Williams and Tiberio Maitre. I'm trying to think of these guys. Robert Villamain, Bob Satterfield, Laurent Doutit. When you look at Ray Robinson, he was in the ring with Robert Villamain, and that was for the Pennsylvania Middleweight Championship title that was vacant. Jake LaMotta would have a record of 83 wins, 19 losses, 4 draws, and 30 knockouts. And his trainer was Al Savini and his brother, Joe LaMotta. A quote from Jake LaMotta, he said that I fought Sugar Ray so many times, no wonder I didn't have diabetes because Ray Robinson's name was Sugar. Now, Ray Robinson was born in Georgia. He ran through Detroit, landed in Harlem, had 174 wins, 109 knockouts, 19 losses. He would have, well, not a stoppage, but he couldn't continue in 1952 on his record. Fought from 1940 to 1965. His 21st professional fight was against Sammy Ingot, 26th professional fight. He was in the ring with Jake LaMotta in his 40th professional fight in 1943, and he would lose for the first time. Now, he defeated him in 42, but he lost him in 43. Fought California Jackie Wilson, and then had a rematch with Jake LaMotta for the third time in 43, twice in that same year, and he would defeat him. Now, Ray Robinson, 1942, had 14 fights with 5 world champions, Frizzy Zivic, Marty Servo, Sammy Ingot, Jake LaMotta, Izzy Genazzo. 1943, he had 6 fights with 2 champions, Jake LaMotta and Henry Armstrong. He fought 3 weeks with Jake LaMotta, basically twice in 43, within a 3-week span, including California Jackie Wilson, and he was also in a ring with Henry Armstrong. So when you look at Ray Robinson's career, what he has done, when you look at it from a micro lens, is really phenomenal. Tuesday, July 10th, 1951, the British middleweight champion, Randy Turpin, upset world middleweight champion, Sugar Ray Robinson, 15 rounds at the Earl's Court Arena in Kennington, United Kingdom. Referee was Eugene Henderson. It was Ray's first middleweight championship title defense. Ray fought in France, Switzerland, Belgium, Germany, Italy, between May 21st and July 1st of 1951. In his seventh fight of the tour, he'd be in the ring with Randy Turpin, and he would lose. They say he left his legs in Paris. Robinson was a 4-1 favorite. Robinson earned $84,000 and Turpin earned $25,000. 18,000 fans attended the contest. It was $250,000 they paid collectively for that contest. Ray would suffer a cut from a headbutt on his left eyebrow. Now, Ray stood 5'11", weighed 154 pounds, had a record of 129 wins, 1 loss, 2 draws, and 85 knockouts. Randy Turpin stood 5'9.5". He weighed 159 pounds, had 40 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, and 29 knockouts. That was their first contest. The second contest, Ray stood 5'11", weighed 157 pounds, had a record of 129 wins, 2 losses, 2 draws, and 85 knockouts. He earned $230,000, 30% of the gate. Randy Turpin stood 5'9.5", weighed 159 pounds, had a record of 41 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, with 29 knockouts. He earned $210,000, 25% of that gate. Now, September 12th, 1951, referee Ruby Goldstein would stop the contest 2 minutes 52 seconds of the 10th round at the New York Polo Grounds. Randy Turpin. His name was Randolph Adolphus Turpin. He was from England. He was born June 7th, 1928, United Kingdom. He died May 17th, 1966. He was 37 years of age at the time of his death, and he would reside in the United Kingdom. He fought from 1946 to 1964. Ended his career with a record of 75 total bouts, 66 wins, 8 losses, 45 knockouts, and he was stopped 5 times himself. Now, September 26, 1951, Joe Sandy Sadler of Boston, Connecticut, knocks out Willie Pep, former world featherweight champion, weighed 123 to 136 pounds. And he was the current champion of Hartford, Connecticut, at New York's Yankee Stadium where the contest was held. Willie Pep weighed 136, he had 136 1-1 with 242 bouts. He was 62-0 before he lost to Sammy Engat the first time. Albert Chalky Wright, Sammy Engat, Sandy Sadler with just a few of his opponents. He would defeat Albert Chalky Wright for the featherweight championship title. He would lose it to Sandy Sadler. They fought a total of 4 times. And Sandy Sadler, he was born June 23rd, 1926 in Boston, Massachusetts. He would die September 18, 2001 in Harlem, New York. He was managed by Charlie Johnston, stood 5'8.5", weighed 116.5 to 134 pounds. And March 7th, 1944 to April 14th, 1956 was his reign. He had a record of 145 wins, 16 losses, 100 knockouts. And the thing about Sandy Sadler, he would go for the rest of his life stating that he damaged his eye in a taxi cab accident. Well, we spoke to Sandy Sadler, my dad and I. He wanted insurance for the accident. He really got his eye damaged with the thumbing of Willie Pep. And that was the second and the last straw of Willie Pep losing his license in New York. Because the first time he took a dive with Lulu Perez, and the second time was when he knocked down Ray Miller, who was a referee, and the contest with Sandy Sadler. And Ray Miller had complained to the commission about it. They had a hearing, and they all voted Willie Pep out. I had so much to talk about. You can see my battery just died. So I'm going to end this conversation. We'll pick it up in the next video. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series, stating all great fights, all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Thanks for listening. We'll continue in the next video. Talk to you later. Be well. Peace.